You were able to do them. G2-25. The one we were doing yesterday. That's it? Yes. Competing activities that you have done earlier. I did it. So once you have done all of them, all the course that you put in, so you are able to understand them better. I did just first previous papers, and like when you are doing a comprehension pattern, definitely be done earlier. Now focus on your strategies. Right? How to answer a question. If you get it wrong, why did you get it wrong? Analyze, always analyze. Mark करके छोड़ दिया wrong आया तो ठीक है, right आया तो ठीक है. Focus on why this is the answer and why this is not the answer. So that way it will help you to do other questions which are similar. Because this paragraph thank you. The one is meant for. The one all great thinker. Yeah. There is nothing different 24. So that's the way you will do the one. Statement forms. Good morning. Good morning. If you are busy with your graduation ceremony. So when is your graduation ceremony?
That was the online.
It was a recording. So we had discussed in class. So doubts discussed yesterday. So I have shared the PDF. Did you go through the PDFs? Did you go through them? $22 का printout you have नहीं है ना? Get back to the comprehensions later unless you. Okay. Have you completed the comprehension? So you got all the answers? No. Answer is easy. But anyway, I will do today's session and then we can discuss this. So worksheet 23, you can try to do them for homework. Right? Worksheet 23, try to complete all of them. So have you attempted all of them or only one? All of them. Fine. Are you practicing? Last second.
Something, I think, 13, 14.
13, 14 hours. So,
12 is.
Acha, there was a little confusion about the coming Sunday ke test, mock test. So both indoor and Zipmat have been put on Sunday. If you can do both of them together, good. पहले ही do बोल नहीं, you can do, it will be opening on Sunday, right? So you can do Zipmat on Sunday and indoor on Monday. Right? Will be there for about 4 days or 5 days. So you can do one on Sunday, one on. So preferably do the Zipmat first. So we can discuss on Monday. Yeah. And make sure everyone does it. Durga, you have any more doubts? You've done any other exercises? And you will have to increase your speed and the volume of the practice. That's why I said go through the textbook questions again. Maybe some of them you don't remember, or most of them you don't remember. So do them again, right? इतने questions बना के रखे हैं, if you don't do justice to them together. Even if you've done it before, maybe you recall the words, especially the vocabulary ones. You don't recall all of them. So it's good to do them again. So when you, like I was telling you, when you do any, whether it's a comprehension passage, all the comprehension passage you may have done, do them again. This time, what is your focus? Strategy. Yeah? How to get the answer right. So you focus on the various parameters that you are looking at, extreme answers, not supported, reading the question carefully, picking up the keywords, then you will focus. So that will help you to prepare for the panel. Panel में same तो नहीं आने वाला. So the strategies will be same. Yeah? The more you practice, the better you get. That's it. You had done the critical reasoning chapter with Deepika ma'am. Critical reasoning वाला chapter किया था नहीं किया? Yeah. You had it. Fine, do you remember?
Yes, sir.
Quickly. Huh? Everything is critical reasoning, no? And specifically the argument, inference, conclusion questions. Where two arguments are given, you have to make a conclusion based on that. Those type of questions will come in Rota, Bitmap, NPAT, good morning. Yes, madam, may I be?
I was at home studying. I feel like when I come here, after that, when I go back and go studying, it's like that was okay.
You missed all the discussions.
I watched it.
And you watched the lectures, or is a different thing? What about your problems? Where you are getting stuck? Go and discuss it.
We were discussing.
Hmm?
We were discussing.
See, when you are in class, it makes a difference. You come to class, when you go home and practice, you have to have that discipline. ऐसा नहीं कि क्लास में आए then I don't want to do it. So you mentally prepare करना है. That's the thing. You work on your mental. Yeah, how many steps have you done?
8.
8. So 10 तक complete करना था. Should have been done by last Sunday. This Saturday तक I want all 15 to be completed. So that we can discuss on Monday. And have you taken the mock? No problems in the mock. How much do you score?
I didn't answer. Like that's all over.
So verbal you will see how much it's.
I didn't answer.
The verbal may, did you check your answers? Then what's the point of the mock?
I just
Mock का point ही है कि you practice, you know where you are going wrong, you can improve. Otherwise, mock देने से क्या फायदा है? You don't have the, you don't even keep the scope of improving, right? And next mock Sunday को लेना है. Sunday they have put up 2 mocks on the in the timetable. Both will open. If you can do both of them together, or at least dip mat का Sunday को and IP mat का Monday. Yeah. How many hours have you people been putting into your practice at home? You're not counting what you're doing. More or less. See, sir, if you are going to depend on only the worksheet that we put up for homework, that's not enough. I told you, go back to the entire volume, do all the questions. जो भी जहाँ से भी extra question मिलता है, have you brought the books so I told you to? Are you doing from there? Maths, English, both are equally important. So if you score a little less in any one of the sections, right? But if some important here, then you have to give equal weightage to that. ये easy लग रहा है करके छोड़ देना नहीं. If you think English का हमने complete कर लिया, और कल क्या बोला था सर को? कि English हमारा complete हो गया, खत्म.
Not that ways. See, in maths, we have some very chapters left.
Yeah.
So what concepts left? English has covered the concepts. For that,
So this week we will be covering a little more, like we will give a little more time for this, and then we'll see. Maybe sir, we give sir. The sir also has another class. Yeah. So for him to come after, is it he has time? After. So after 2 if you can wait. Right? And we'll see how it works. But practice करना है and we'll discuss all your doubts. So when you practice, when you take a test, write your doubts. Have you written your doubts for the mock test, for the class test?
No, answer.
Huh.
That's it. I'll see that.
Any more doubts? You have done any more? So write all your doubts on the on paper. So you know that ये वाला ढूंढना नहीं पड़ेगा. Otherwise you'll be just scrolling up and down on your mobile and not finding it. Shouldn't miss out on it. Okay, so today we will be moving on to Shyam, have you done any more on the class test?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you done any more class tests?
Yes, ma'am. I've done 2, 3 remaining. I'll do today.
कहाँ तक पहुँचे?
Last test, ma'am. यहाँ तक पहुँचा. 11, 12, I think. 11 तक पहुँच.
Parents for Wednesday. So by Friday you will be able to complete the classes. If by Friday you complete your classes, we can discuss your classes on Saturday. So Monday we will keep
Yes,
working.
ma'am.
Yeah. So by
Yes,
Friday,
ma'am.
Saturday morning you complete. Right?
Okay, ma'am.
So we will
Ma'am, have
be,
you started with the critical reasoning?
yeah, we are doing critical reasoning. So I had left it till the end because whatever we've done so far, we've done the strategies in most of the questions, like para-jumble, para-completion, we've done strategies. We did some of the reading comprehension. So when we were doing reading comprehension questions, where were we stuck? Or where were we going wrong? We had some learnings, right? So what were our learnings yesterday? Context is important. What can we conclude and what we cannot conclude? That was important. Huh? So a statement is given to you based on the passage, and we ended up marking it right when actually it was wrong. So why was it wrong? Extreme. Yeah. Could be extreme or something we cannot conclude on the basis of what is given to us. Yeah. Then we had a little problem with the detailed question. One of when they are specifically asking for one reason, we don't go with something that is maybe mentioned but is dead limits. Right? So we'll specifically do the argument based questions. Remember? Argumented. Okay, what is the difference between inference and conclusion? Are you clear about that? What's the difference? What understand? Conclusion won't be given as such, but you can make a conclusion.
It's dilated.
It's dilated. It's more explicit based on the facts. Both are based on it. You even if you are inferring something, it's not something that you can infer which is outside of the passage. Everything should be supported by the facts. So we'll go into the little details on these. So all our inferences or conclusions are based on certain assumptions made, especially when we come to the argument type of questions. Yeah, the logical reasoning questions where we have the verbal reasoning part. Those are based on conclusions and assumptions or inferences. Now all of these are connected. How they are connected, we will go through that. So when we talk about an argument, what is an argument? First, we have to be clear about the concepts. What is an argument as such? Argument is based on the facts, right? And so arguments will comprise of assumptions, conclusions, and all of this will be factual. Yeah. So we can say that argument is a set of statements of which one is a conclusion, another is facts, and the third is assumption. Okay? So the three things should be there. No matter what, you may have a paragraph on the basis of which you are making an argument. Yes, good morning, Ayushi. Ayushi, are you connected? Ayushi, can you hear me? Okay, if you can't respond, please check your connection and join back. Okay, so now we have questions which talk about strengthening an argument, or this particular statement weakens the argument, right? Or which of these statements support the argument? Or which of the statements do not support the argument? This type of question will come, right? So now when we are talking about strengthening or weakening the argument, what are we focusing on? What can we conclude from it? Right? So everything boils down to the statements, the facts, and the conclusion. So when we are talking about an author trying to convince you about something, so what do we look at? Which statement supports that argument that the author is making? Obviously, right? Now, the facts that the author gives. Say you are trying to convince your friend that मैं classes ले रहा हूँ, PR. What will you tell your friend to convince? So now he may be taking some other class. So will he be convinced? So what if you say there are lots of benefits? What do you have to give him? Facts. Right? So without facts, you cannot put up an argument. Without facts, you cannot expect anybody to conclude something. Right? So facts are the evidences. Now, fact is also, in some cases, in the question you will see the word premise. Right? Premise are what? Facts. Facts and premise are the same thing. So you shouldn't get confused if you see the word premise instead of fact. Okay. What are assumptions? Are they stated? They're not stated. But are the assumptions completely different from what has been stated? It will be based on what has already been stated. Right? So something that the author has mentioned Now, if you read between the lines, you can figure out why the author said that, or why the author put up that answer, right? So that will be your assumption. And assumption is always related to what the author is thinking, not what you are inferences or what you are thinking. But assumption is what the author is thinking. So author makes some arguments, gives some conclusions, these are all based on the assumptions. Now inference is also based on the given fact. Yeah, you can infer anything. Say if I say that 5 students didn't appear for the test, what would you infer? Yeah, why? So you will start inferring why did they not do? Yeah, or if I say only 5% of the students cleared the test, so what will you infer? They studied well, or the test was difficult, right? Or this was not taught, that's why they failed. So inferences can be various. Based on facts that are given to you, you can have various inferences. But conclusions, can you have various conclusions? You can have only one conclusion. And so as we said, the assumptions are always with respect to the author, and inferences are always with respect to the reader, listener. So, and what again we come back to keywords. What helps you? How do you get your facts? With the keywords. So this I've just got a few just from the system that is already there in your book. If you want to go to the details, you have to go through the lesson again. So assumptions, we said they are unstated hidden facts that support conclusion. What are conclusions? Totally based on the facts and the output, right? So there is a formula that no matter what you are doing, whether you are doing a short question, whether you're doing a passage, facts plus assumptions will give you conclusions. Conclusions cannot be only on the basis of assumptions. They have to be supported by the facts. So if a conclusion is given to you, it is not supported by the fact, it's not okay. Right? So conclusions we did when we were doing parallel completion. Remember? Something that was not based on the passage was not a conclusion. Well, that's what it is. So facts, what are facts? Facts are either verifiable from what has been given to you, or they can be in some cases universal truths. Yeah, something that always happens. That can also be taken as a fact. Figures, data, these are all facts. Now we can also come across something called judgments. Judgments are based on what? Opinions. Right? You can have inference, you can have conclusion, and you can have judgment. Judgment will, maybe it is not supported by the facts, but a person can make a judgment based on personal opinion. Right? So these are the other 3 things you have to keep in mind. So inferences, now we said facts plus assumptions give you conclusions. Now what gives you inference? Fact plus a logical deduction from the conclusion. Yeah. So a conclusion has been given. Now from that we make a logical deduction. That will be inference. But that again should be based on some fact. Right? So when we are talking about a paragraph or a passage, anything that we need to conclude or we need to inform will always be supported by the facts. Nothing will be your answer which is not supported. So all inferences are based on facts, and from the facts we can have a logical or logical deduction. So now we come to the strategies. Right? So we know what are inferences, what are conclusions, what are facts, and what is there. Right? So these are the things that we have to keep in mind. And how we get to those. So now this part we have done earlier, but still I have repeated it so that it is ingrained in your brains. Very important. Every time we do a question, the same thing we have to keep in mind. So identify conclusions, facts, and assumptions. That you have to be able to. Now, if you think that the assumption is a fact, so you have to identify the conclusion as it is given, facts that are there, and the assumptions that can be made only and only on the basis of what has been given to you. Right? So can we assume if it is given that the third standard students grew only trees? What conclusion do you get? Can you conclude that third standard students all over draw only trees? No. Yeah. So logical deduction and generalization is different. So do we generalize for everything? If you need restless and sleepy for
My favorite and
that you also. Do you take medicine? You feel better?
No.
And we don't need to brain. So now this is what we always did for no matter what question we got. Paraphrase, say it in your own words, break it down, right? So any passage you get, whether it is small or big, or your fill in the blanks questions with 2 to 3 sentences or a long sentence, always break it down and separate the relevant data from the irrelevant data. Pick out the keywords, right? Strategy for every single question. Understanding what is being asked, understanding the question, understanding the options, very important. If you don't read the question properly, what happens? Get it down. Yeah? Because the questions are formulated in such a way that the moment you don't pay attention to the details, don't pay attention to reading what the question properly, there will be an option which you will select if you don't. The people who have created these questions have kept that in mind. Right? Why? What are they testing you for? Your analytical skills, whether you can analyze properly or not. And why? They're looking for future managers. They're not looking for future just coders. They're looking for people who can solve problems. So to solve a problem, you have to be able to have an analytical mind. So analytical mind, very name, that thing. It's not just knowledge. Right? You mark 5 questions correct, okay? What type of questions you got right? Also, because all of them are distant. Obviously. So the more of these type of questions you can write, means you can analyze. So understanding what is being asked is important, and answer choices which are not according to the main idea, or what is not according to what is being stated. And we have to understand the logic. That's why we always say now, why the author said this? That is important. So when you're doing argument questions, any comprehension questions, you always need to know the why. Relevant logical statements are important. Now, what are the assumptions that you can choose? Yeah, the assumptions are what? Assumptions are based on. So when you're doing the critical reasoning questions, assumptions are something that you have to deduce based on what is it. Will it be given to you? No. But you can deduce those based on what is being given. So assumptions are infinite and positive. That is one thing you have to be given. What does that mean? When you talk about assumptions, they are positive. Can you conclude on the basis of a negative assumption? What is the purpose of assumptions? Conclude something, right? Assumptions are used for conclusions. So, if you have a negative assumptions, will you be able to conclude something? No. You need assumptions which are positive and based on what has been given to you. And another thing, if you have 3, 4, 4 assumptions, do not compare the assumptions. Right? Assumptions are based on specific facts. So if you start comparing assumptions, what do you do? ये अच्छा है कि वो ज्यादा अच्छा है कि वो ज्यादा अच्छा, right? Or maybe some assumptions are over and above what has been given. So we have to be careful about that. And generalizations based on what has been given to you, never do. Right? General statements which or conclusions which are generalizing a fact is unclear. We came across that yesterday. So, yeah, to a large extent, many, much, always, yeah, always generalize. Assumptions are, as he said, implicit. It implies. May not be stated clearly, but implies based on facts. So, how do you know that a particular statement should be an assumption? It's a suggestion. Anything suggested means can be assumed. You can assume on the basis of that. Request, then that particular assumption will be implicit. A restatement of a state of any given fact, will it be an assumption? No. Can we say a restatement implies? No. Restatement is a fact. Same thing, paraphrase is never an assumption or a conclusion. Okay, yeah, this is one thing which we use. That is, you have assumptions are given to you. Yeah. Now, always we go by the process of elimination. So if you say this assumption does not support, right? So when you negate an assumption, you know it's not your choice. Okay, now some of the weakening of conclusion questions will come directly also. Which of these assumptions weaken the conclusion? Means, does not support. Does not support. Right? If it doesn't support, obviously it is weakening. So now we come to the types of critical reasoning questions based on assumptions and conclusions. So you can get the strengthening or weakening the conclusion one question. You're given assumption, which of these strengthen or weaken. Finding an assumption based on the facts. Finding an inference. So you don't have to be confused between conclusion and inference. Resolving a paradox question can also come in. Mimic the reasoning. A reasoning is given to you, and they may ask you that which is the best reasoning. Now, if you look at the argument questions, now we already know what arguments are. Correct. Statements based on facts, which support the conclusion. So it will include conclusion or inference, right? And argument is something which is, say, you have those questions also where you they give you that a statement is given, two statements are given. Based on that, what action should be taken, right? So they would use it to go by the logic. So their logical reasoning or something that is most reasonable will go. It may not be like ethically okay. Like there was a question about whether you should war against countries which are creating problems, right? Ethically, you should say why should there be war? But based on the facts given, you have to answer. So you have, when you are given the arguments, you evaluate the arguments, find out whether they're strong or weak. You guys getting very good. Right? It's so sleepy. So sleepy. Didn't have breakfast. Mango. No wonder. Only mango. What's I was trying to do? So evaluating arguments is important. Analyze. Till you get analyze. So, and this we already did earlier. Assumptions will either strengthen or weaken your arguments. So, if you are dealing with strengthening questions, strengthening argument questions, what are you looking for? That is social support, right? So it should be logical, practical, universally applicable. These are things like it should be like, अच्छा ये दिया है, and only on the basis of that I am thinking. You have to have a broader logical aspect, right? Like whether a student should be punished or not. But based on the facts, yeah, you have to use your logic based on what is given to you. Not that, okay, students should not be punished at all. Right? If it says that you should put in 6 hours of study to clear the gap, or 8 hours of study to clear the gap, there should be some facts which will support, right? So you should say that 8 hours can't put that. Yeah? First thing, so don't go with the first thing that comes to your mind. When you are doing these questions, you have to go with the reasoning, not the first thing that comes to your mind. Or like you don't use your heart over mind, right? So logic is very important. Yes, Ayushi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible now. What happened?
Nothing. I'm just not able to connect my webcam to my PC. I'll try in next class, but I'm present.
are present, but you joined so late, and why aren't you coming to the class physically?
Ma'am, I had went out with my family. That's why. I just came yesterday.
Are you still in the holiday mood?
No.
So anybody joining the class should be on time. There are no excuses for joining.
Ma'am, I did join. Like I tried joining in time, but there was some issue regarding my PC. So.
Did you inform? You should at least inform if there is some issue and you're not able to join.
Sorry.
Okay, chalo. So because if you join in the middle anytime, then it's system. Okay, so any argument should be supported by a relevant reason, right? Strong argument, that's why we say strong argument will always have the why. Why the dog? Or why should we take this as a, or why is this supporting the conclusion? Right? So if the why is missing, it's a weak argument. Right? So always ask yourself the why. Don't go by ये लग रहा है, ये लग रहा है. क्यों लग रहा है? That is it. The moment you ask why and you join the dots, you get to the correct answer. So your argument should corroborate that the central assumption is correct. What do you mean by corroborate? Evidence. Right. See, facts should support your statement. Right? So, like they say, there are two ways of strengthening the argument. Either, so your choice should be correct according to an assumption question, and it should also be correct for a strengthening question. Both ways. If you are basing it on an assumption, you should have the why to your assumption. Why am I assuming this? Right? And it should also be strengthening the argument. Yeah, so this is one way that you can see what the, now if you're confused, you have assumed something. Do you find your assumption in the options here? Right? So if you find your assumptions in the options given and your assumption is logical, that can be your answer. And secondly, the answer should confirm the assumption by so when they say by mentioning an experiment, survey, or any other means it is supported by the facts given to you. Yeah, survey, anything that supports the assumption. So these are the two things that you have to see, whether it answers your question or why, and it is supported by a fact. Yeah. So unless that happens, your answer is not correct. Now, when you are talking about weakening argument, what weakens an argument? Something that is illogical, impractical, or irrelevant. Extreme statements weaken arguments. Something that is not directly related to the question. A weak fact. Opinions. Some arguments that are based on biased opinions, or they are ambiguous. Not according to what has been given means they are superfluous. So those will weaken the arguments. And a weak argument, as we said, will not have the why. Reason will not be. Yeah. So you have facts. Your argument should be supported by the facts. The The why should come from the facts. A weak argument will not answer the why. Okay? So you can disprove the assumption you have made an assumption. The argument is not according to the assumption, or it is not supporting your assumption. And a choice that supports that states that the assumption is wrong. Yeah. If a particular statement is proving your assumption, will it be supporting the argument? Right? So, and evidences which are not based on what has been given to you, or some other evidences will not. Anything that is not based on given facts, anything that doesn't answer the question why this assumption is correct, is a wrong. That will weaken the argument. And any new information that is not given will also be that is not supporting your assumption. So it's basically you can say anything that does not support your assumption will weaken an argument. Right? Simple. Okay, let's look at this question. So, should those who receive dowry despite the law prohibiting it be punished? Now, there are two arguments given to you. Yes, those who violate the law must be punished. Right? The second says, no, dowry system is firmly rooted in the society since time immemorial. So, and your question is, should those receiving dowry be punished by law? And it also says, despite law prohibiting it. So you know that law prohibits dowry. Now, what do you think about the first statements? Those who are violating the law prohibits dowry. Those who are violating the law, they should be punished. So this is a strong argument. Yes. Now, if you look at the second part, dowry system is firmly rooted in society since time immemorial. That's a fact. Yeah. But is that fact according to your statement? No, because our main premise is there is a law prohibiting dowry. So will we go with 2? No. Right? So, like I just said, option 2 is doing what? It is weakening the argument. They're giving a fact, but that fact itself is weakening the argument. So we will not go with something that is weakening the argument. What about this? Which of the following? Now the statement or a conclusion we can say is Chandigarh is a pleasant city. Yeah, it's a pleasant city. So first thing that comes to our mind is what makes it pleasant? Now we look at the facts. Which of the following, if true, would most strengthen the above conclusion? There are many great galleries in Chandigarh and Patiala has many great restaurants. Third one, obviously. Well, first one is talking about Chandigarh and many great galleries make a nice experience. Yeah. And the second one is clearly not because it is talking about Patiala. If it had said Chandigarh has many restaurants, then maybe it would have support. So this is clearly not support. Okay. Now, the inference questions. Yeah, we did conclusions. We haven't really done them in detail, but we did the arguments. Now, what is inference based on? Facts. Facts. What type of facts? How do you infer something? I mean, facts. Yeah. So again, we come down to focusing on the main ideas. So can we, like we were doing the para completion, last sentence, last sentence completion, anything that was based on a particular point only, was that our conclusion or inference? So whether it is conclusion or inference, it will not be based on only one particular fact. It will cover the entire thing. You want to have water? Take a deep breath. 3 deep breaths, long ones. Okay? So now when we are inferring, does the author's opinion matter? Yes. We are inferring based on the author's opinion. Yeah? The authors, whether we conclude, see, whether we conclude or we infer, the inference is our idea of what the author is saying. Right? And conclusion is author's view of what he is saying. Both are based on what the author is saying. We can't have something, especially when we are doing these questions, can we have an idea which is completely different from the author is saying? No. Yeah, everything has to be based on the on what the author has written, what the author wants to say. So purpose of writing an author's opinion is what the author means to say. So we cannot ignore what the author means to say. So what do? We paraphrase, yeah, and some keywords that will help you, except, but, and not. So anything that will contrast to what the author is saying cannot be your entrance, right? Anything contrasting will not be your entrance. That much if you remember, conclusion ho, inference ho, argument ho, anything that is in contrast is not your entrance. Anything that is in contrast can do only one thing. What? Weaken an argument. Other than that, contrast is always eliminated. Right? Now, when you're going through the choices, any choice that the passage supports can be announced. Anything that the passage doesn't support will not be announced. So, everything will be based on the information in what is given. 2 sentences, 3 sentences, big passage, comprehension passage, anything that is based on the information, only and only based on it. So anything that is out of scope, remember we were doing out of scope. Anything that is out of scope of the passage or the given information is not good. So obviously, what do you eliminate? We went by the process of elimination. So in these cases, what do we eliminate? Something that is in contrast, something that is not supported out of the passage, something that is not according to the author's purpose or opinion can be eliminated. So, and what do you have to keep in mind? Explicit answers. Something that is explicitly stated or clearly stated. Is it an inference or conclusion? Something that is clearly stated can be an inference. Right? Something that implies can be an inference or conclusion. Something that is explicit? No. So, anything that is explicitly stated would be a repetition of what has been said. Right? So, that is not an answer. So, inference is not directly given in the passage, never ever. Anything that is directly given in the passage cannot be inference. So, you have to understand the question. Yeah. So, Anything that repeats or paraphrases something from the passage? No. So what is, that's why paraphrasing, now paraphrasing is how important in any of these questions. Paraphrasing is most important. Yeah, say it in your own words. Break it down, say it in your own words. Any question you get, first thing, understand, put it in your own words. Simplify. So, any statement that has been given and any answer which is paraphrasing that is saying the same thing. Yeah? Same thing stated again is never your answer. So, inference should be based, it can be based on what of the lines, but it will not be a repetition of that. Right? Your inference will be based on facts. Facts come from the passage. But will your inference be a repetition of the same thing? Right? Tagya? And okay, this one always we are stuck with two choices. A hona chahiye ki wo hai. Then what do? How do we analyze? So it should be relevant on the basis, have a relevant basis in the passage to support the conclusion. So always we went with something that was stated and we can conclude on the basis of that. So you infer or conclude always on the basis of what has been given to you. And another important thing, do not generalize. Yeah. So we always have a tendency to, and they will always give you two answers which are very close. So we should know how to edit. How to choose between two very close answers. That is the main problem. And that's why I keep repeating these things. You must be thinking, ये तो पहले किया था. I'm फिर क्यों बोल रही है? Yeah? And you say this is boring now. Will you first let us have our concepts in our mind? Everything. We should be getting only questions, right? We'll do questions, right? I didn't say we won't do questions. Now, what are distortions? What do you mean by distortions? Yeah. Sorry. Distorted facts. Those are usually given in your options. 4 or 5 options DNA. 2 of them are one is completely distorted, one is half distorted. Truly speaking. Right? So distortions are always so twisting the connection of ideas. Dono ideas or the fact. It is based on the, maybe you are thinking it is based on the facts, but it is actually distorting the concept or distorted it. So that will we have to be very careful about this. Extreme answers we know. We have to be careful about. Broad generalizations and something which is unrelated, not in the scope. So this one, we did all these, putting them in one place. So if you open the PPT, write down these things in your, right? You can write it down. What are the things you have to be careful of? Just recall whatever we said so far. What can get you to the wrong answer? And this is not only in the critical reasoning questions, but also the questions, right? When you are confused between two answers, what do you do? So anything that is not in the scope, or unrelated is not your answer. Anything that is extreme is not your answer. Any information that is distorted is not your answer. What else is not your answer? Contrast. Contrast is not your answer. Right? Any contradictory statement is not your answer. If you can keep these in mind, and generalizations, not your answer. Right? We usually go wrong in analyzing the options, but if you keep this in mind, you will not. You will be able to analyze. Okay, here is a passage. So it says, read the given facts or passage, and then you will come to the questions. So people are always less happy. People are always less happy to accept scientific data they feel contradicts their preconceived beliefs. So if a scientific data, how do you paraphrase this? Paraphrase the first sentence.
Are not happy. So that they are
Based on what?
based on science based.
So if they have a preconceived notion, they will not accept anything, even if it is based on scientific. That's the main idea, right? Okay, second sentence. So what were your keywords in the first sentence? Identify keywords.
Less happy. It's good.
Okay, less happy you can say. So it's talking about scientific data that contradicts preconceived beliefs. Doesn't it? The next sentence. No surprise here, no human likes to be wrong. Right? They don't want to believe you because they have an idea. Right? So we have in our daily life, we have come across a lot of these type of ideas. Dadi ne bola, nani ne bola. People say, WhatsApp tells us. Do we believe everything? But science isn't supposed to care about preconceived notions, right? What is science about? Science is about facts and results. Yeah, something that can be proven. Science, at least good science, tells us about the world as it is, and not as some wish it to be. Sometimes what science finds is consistent with a particular religion's wishes, but usually it is not. So sometimes it is consistent, but usually not. So overall, what is the main idea of this passage? If you want to, okay, if you have a question of summarize the passage or pick out the summary and the summary in one sentence, what would your summary be? The summary will be based on your paraphrasing the entire passage. Keywords should be there in the summary. So if you were to summarize, what is the main thing that should come?
Science contradicts.
Science contradicts.
Preconceived notions.
So you said science contradicts preconceived notions. Does it always contradict? So what are you doing? You're making a generalization. Will it be correct? No. It's talking about people may not want to believe science because of the preconceived notions, and that science is sometimes consistent and sometimes not consistent with preconceived notions. So our main idea was people and their preconceived notions, whether it is supported by science or not. Right? Let's see what question we have. So, what can be inferred about good science? Yeah, what can be inferred about good science? So, what was good science about? We can go back. Good science, it said, science, at least good science, tells us that the world tells us about the world as it is and not as some wish it to be. Right? So we have four options here. Good science is well received by educated people. Now that could be true, but is it based on the passage? Can we really conclude? It's not an absolutely wrong statement as such, but can we infer on the basis of the passage? Is it talking about educated or non-educated? No. We're talking about preconceived notions. Now, can we say educated people don't have preconceived notions? Right? A good science is based on concrete results obtained through testing and hypothesis. We can say corroborating facts. Yeah, we can say that. Good science and religion are same. Can we say that? Good science will always prove the general populace law. That's extreme. Yeah. So here we have always, which makes it extreme. Good science and religion are same. It is not supported. Good science is based on concrete results. We can say from the passage. Good science is well received by educated people. We cannot say from the passage. Right? So what did we eliminate? Extreme answer. Something that is not supported. And something that is out of scope. Right? So your answer is 2. So then read the position. It can be modified. Okay, let's look at this one. Yes. Read carefully. Do you know the meaning of repositories? Repository usually refers to a person or book which has lots of information, or a place where you, if you talk about objects, then a place where you store those important objects. Yeah, repository is like, in this case, what you can you say repository? The Roman law school had repositories of imperial constitutions. Means they had kept them or rather in the law school that you could find the constitutions, imperial constitutions, right? So what is the main idea of the passage? Yes. What is the main idea of the passage? Paraphrase the passage, come on. Yes. Give me a summary or paraphrase of the passage. Meaning of repositories. If somebody can find the meaning of repositories. So, come on, quick. First thing, paraphrase and summarize. So, what is it telling us about? First, it says Beirut Law School was a center for the study of Roman law. Yeah, in ancient days in Beirut, it thrived under the patronage of the Roman emperors and was the Roman Empire's preeminent center of law until 551 AD. So till 551 AD, it was the center where law was studied, and the Roman law was also studied. So Roman law schools had repositories of imperial constitution and formalized the study and practice of law to relieve the busy imperial courts. So, to relieve the busy imperial courts means the Roman law schools studied the law, yeah, which was implemented by the imperial courts. And we can say that, yeah, or we can infer that. Archiving of imperial constitutions is the task of judges in referring to legal precedents. So archiving imperial constitution, this is related to repositories of imperial constitutions. Yeah, so they kept the constitution, they studied it. So it became easier for the judges to refer to the legal documents. That's it. Okay. Now the question is, what can be inferred from the passage? We have been given two statements. Which of these can be inferred? A can be inferred. Is it supported? It says Beirut Law School as a repository for imperial constitutions and a center of law allowed Roman judges to speed up cases in imperial courts. So what is this doing? It's more or less. So is the passage talking about speeding up cases in imperial courts? No, it's not directly stated, but it is implied, right? So, and the question is talking about what can you infer? So anything that can imply from the facts given to you can be your answer. If it just said is the task of judges, would that be your answer? No, but that is explicitly stated, right? Okay, why not B? It talks about destruction of Beirut Law School and no imperial constitution and formalized laws. Is the passage telling, can we infer that from the passage anyway? It's not talking about destruction. It's not talking about no imperial constitution, but it's clearly saying imperial constitutions were kept there, right? So we cannot be. You can go through the reasoning. Now we come to some questions which are related to integrity. Really? Yes. See, we'll just finish up. Okay. So now we have already spoken about what a conclusion can be. What can be a conclusion? For any statements given, what will a conclusion be? Supported by facts. Yeah. What else? And something the author is saying. Right? Not something that can be supported by fact or the author has said. Yeah. It should come from the what the author has said, has been said. There is a fine line between inference and conclusion, but still we can figure out. So now if there is an opinion or suggestion, that can be a conclusion. Opinion, judgment reached. So will an opinion be an inference? No. Right? A solution given, will it be an inference? It can be a conclusion. Right? So that's where we can differentiate. Okay, just how to go about it. So so now in any passage, first thing, paraphrase, figure out what the author wants to say, right? And if you have words like opinion, in the opinion of the author, or the people came to a judgment that, or if you have words like content, conclude, believe, or clearly stated, this is a that we have done earlier also. Right? Recommendations, if there is therefore, like companies suffer a huge loss this quarter. Therefore, they should do a thorough analysis of the strategy. So, what does therefore give you? The reason. Yeah, a conclusion. Something happened because of that reason. You are talking about it. It really was. You can go there and see. So this is nothing new. If you have forgotten, put it back in here. So conjunctions help you to figure out conclusions. Contrasts. If there's something contrasting, will it be a conclusion? A contrasting idea may not be a conclusion as such, which is completely different. But you can say, though this happened, the government was still able to manage the situation. That can be. It should be related. Yeah, something related to what has been said can be a conclusion. You want to look at an example of conclusion? इसमें conclusion क्या हो? Yeah. So why? So remember, conclusion should always answer the question why. Conclusion is based on what is given. So this can be converted into an argument. So if an argument comes up, this will answer your why. So I'll give you a break. People can't concentrate. Really? Okay. This chapter you are done with Deepshika ma'am, no? Huh? So she did only examples or she went through the whole thing?
That's the whole thing about it. Okay.
Okay, that's all. But you were not able to figure out conclusions and why this is.
Starting with
Shall we get back? Yeah. How the class going?
Ish. Ish. Ish.
Let's get it.
Difficult.
Next, Ms. Rita.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Full focus. Now, if we look at this statement, or two statements, yeah? Out of these, what is the conclusion? Statement here,
Certain.
huh? Stop selling, stop all cigarette sales. That is the conclusion. And it is based on the second sentence. So will you get a conclusion always later? Like conclusion can come first, statement can come later. So don't get confused. कि पहले जो दिया था वो तो conclusion नहीं conclusion can be beginning. Right? So when you are specifically dealing with these questions where the argument and conclusion type of questions, argument can be later, conclusion can be. What about this? The dreamer rejected the ordinary, J invited the ordinary, J is no dreamer. There are three statements. Which one is a conclusion? Question. Read them carefully and answer. Two facts. That's clear. The dreamer rejected the ordinary is a fact or conclusion? Fact. Fact. J invited the ordinary? Fact. So from these two, what can we conclude?
J is not A.
So if your J is no dreamer was given in your conclusions, in your options, with other conclusions, then we should be able to figure out what the right one is. Look at this one. No human law is framed for a multitude of human beings. The majority of human beings are not perfect in virtue. Therefore, human laws do not prohibit all vices. There are three statements. Yeah. So you have to figure out what the facts are and what the conclusion is. Because it begins with therefore. Yeah. That will be the. So your fact is what? Every law is an infraction of liberty. That's the fact. Yeah. Every law is evil is a fact or conclusion. So out of the two parts, which is the conclusion? And when you are coming to a conclusion, what do? Ask yourself the question why. Yeah, that why should come from the facts. Does it come from the fact? Yes. Second part explains the first part. Look at the fifth example. If a criminal law prohibits suicide, that is not an argument valid in the church. Yeah? And besides, prohibition is ridiculous. For what penalty can frighten a person who is not afraid of death itself? So we can first break it down, simplify, paraphrase. This one the paraphrase can be here again. So if we paraphrase, what does it come out? First part. If the criminal law prohibits suicide, it is not an argument which is valid in the church. Yeah, criminal law prohibiting suicide is not valid in the church. Right? Then it says, and besides, prohibition is ridiculous. Yeah, law prohibiting suicide is ridiculous. Why should we prohibit suicide? Yeah, means to say that. For what penalty can frighten a person who is not afraid of death itself? So, the last part, did you understand the last part? Yes. What does it say? Yeah, so the prohibition is a penalty or leads to penalty. A person who is not afraid of death will be careful. Yeah. So in this, what is the conclusion?
Prohibition is ridiculous.
Huh?
The prohibition is ridiculous.
Prohibition is ridiculous. That is your conclusion. Yeah. Because this last part is telling us why prohibition will not work. Yeah. And the first part is telling us a fact that we should not have prohibition. Yeah. So that middle part is telling us the conclusion. Okay, now this is there in the book, but I don't think you would be interested in reading the book. So we were talking about difference between inference and conclusion. So get a little more clear. So what was inference we were talking about? What were the main things that make it an inference? Opinion meaning it's based on facts. It will be explicitly stated or implicit. Right? So inference will be on the basis of facts. It is done by examining facts, right? And it's a suggestion. We can give a suggestion based on that. That is important. So it goes about, and another thing, an inference will not always be accurate. Okay? Or there may be more than one inference. So inference cannot be accurate or can be accurate or incorrect. Both ways. Yeah, it may be correct, it may be wrong. It can be justified or unjustified. It can be logical or illogical. So this is the main difference. A conclusion will be what? Always right. A conclusion will always be justified. A conclusion will always be correct based on the given facts. You can't have 4 types of conclusions for the same thing. There can be only one conclusion. Inference can be right. Each person can have a different. Right? So, conclusion is next logical step to the information. And yeah, a statement will have two conditions for a conclusion. So when you are talking about like two parts would be something has happened and because of that, or A has happened because of A, B has happened. So we have two statements and B should logically conclude from A. If there is no logic, then it should. Okay, so first it must be logically derived statement from the information given and not inferred from the statement. Anything that is inferred or called a conclusion and it may not be logical. So like they've given an example. If your watch is broken, what would then if somebody tells you my watch is broken, what will you inform? Why it is broken? How did it break? Right? Now what will you do? Now you have to throw it away. Those will be inferences. But will those be conclusions? No. Now if it says that it can be repaired, and I know the shop that has the same watch. If this is the statement given to you, that my watch is broken, it can be repaired now, and I know the shop that has the same watch. What can you conclude from that? When I can buy a new watch, yeah? Because my watch is broken and it can't be repaired, I will go for a new watch. That is a conclusion, not an end. Right? So your conclusion comes as a logical derivative of the tax rate. So when you have options given to you, you have to be able to differentiate between the inputs and the conclusion. Right? I don't want you to go wrong in this. So inference can be, we can say an educated guess, and conclusion is more about logically derived text. Yeah, after all, this is the crux of the matter. Now you will not go wrong. Inference IT conclusion and no conclusion. Right? Yeah. So now if you are confused, what will you tell yourself? Now two things are stated, two options, giving you something that is not specifically stated in the text. A conclusion will not be specifically stated, but it implies from the facts. Inference implies, but you cannot conclude anything. Right? So this is very, very important. Okay, let's look at this question. Sam took a deep breath and dried his sweaty palms on his jeans. He looked down the ramp and shivered. It was a steep drop, but he had to go through with it. Everyone was staring straight at him. He put his skateboard down and got ready. We could do it. Right? So we have some facts, some things he is doing, some feelings he has. Okay? So what can be info? What evidence helps you to infer that Sam was nervous? What supports that? Second one, response per second. Now, she says he looked down the ramp. Can that be supporting the inference that he was nervous? Now, he looked down the ramp can be neutral, can be positive, can be negative. Yeah? He could be looking down the ramp feeling nervous. He could be looking down the ramp feeling determined. Yeah, or just thinking, okay, that is the ramp and I have to go down. So that doesn't give you definitely the inference that he is anonymous. Now this based on the same passage, yeah, on the evidence, it can be concluded that Sam, it can be concluded that Sam will do what? What can you conclude? He is not going down, can you conclude? No. He is probably going to get on his skateboard and go down the ramp. We can say that. He is probably going to look at his friends and ask them what to do. And we conclude on what has been given. The friends were staring at him, but was he looking at his friends? No. He's probably going to fix his skateboard. We take an idea anyway. That's it. Yeah. So the same passage, we can infer some things, but the inference is also based on what has been told. Conclusion also based on what has been told. Yeah. So these I have just put them in one place, so you can write them down in bold letters or just copy paste where you want to. Yeah, things to remember. Right? And you read it now earlier. So I'll share the PPT, go to the PPT again and write it down when you go. So extremes, contradictions, out of scope, these are all not going to be your conclusion. Neither can you. Right? Even when you're talking about inference, will it be out of scope? Should be based on what has been given. Right? Now let's look at a particular question type. Course of action question. Yeah? Some facts are given to you, statements or arguments, and then a procedure or situation which should be done or a possible course of action. So we will go with something that is feasible, yeah, it is practically possible, and which is universal and logical. So if it is not practically possible or it is not logical, that will not be our course of action. The course of action cannot be something absolutely out of it. Logic. Yeah, you have to ask yourself, why should this be the right answer? Right? So always say, remember we said the why. Everything should be supported by the why. Yeah. So here, now the correct course of action when you're talking about a problem. What will be the course of action to solve a problem? Would it be something that aggravates it? It should lessen the problem, improve a situation, not create a new problem. Anything that creates a new problem, it won't be. Anything that complicates a problem or makes it complex, won't be your answer. And it should be related, it should be practical and related, not something that is unrelated. It is. So you have a statement, some serious blunders were detected in the account section of a factory. And you have two courses of action here. Huh?
So there's the law.
In the 8th or 9th model. Different mock now. There are some, okay, have you done the classes which have these questions? Argument questions? I think it will be easier. So here, what will be the course of action? Some serious blunders are detected in the account section of factory. So, an efficient team of auditors should be appointed to check the accounts, or a show cause notice should be issued to all employees involved in the irregularity. What should be done? What?
Second one is issue of all employees involved. But this is talking about one section of this.
So,
All
if,
employees involved in that section.
now all employees are included in, so those employees are included in all?
In that section,
Yeah.
not all employees.
So, okay, now, will issuing notice and make the situation better? Now, issuing notice to all employees in, it says all employees involved in the irregularity. Specific. It's not what the factory done.
Exactly, and I assume
Hey, in the irregularity. So anyone who was responsible for that. Yeah, in the irregularity, there is a key word. So they should be issued notice. And efficient team of auditors should be appointed to check the accounts. That also is important. So both should be done, right? Let's look at this. So, in spite of the principal's repeated warnings, a child was caught exploding crackers secretly. Yeah. And you see, not were all the children caught? No. So, all crackers should be taken away from the child, and he should be warned not to do it again. And the child should be severely punished for his wrong act. What will be effective? What would be effective? So if you look at number 1, all crackers should be taken away and he should be warned not to do it again. Now if he is just warned and crackers taken away, he can go get more crackers and do it. Or should strict action be taken?
So both should be done.
Both should be done. Child should be severely punished for his wrong act. Right? So what should be done? Now, if you look at the statement given, read the statement given. Yeah. In spite of principal's repeated warnings. So, did the warnings work? Huh? Okay, so in spite of the principal's warnings, child was caught exploding crackers secretly in school. And the first statement says, all crackers should be taken away, from the child, and he should be warned not to do it again. So in spite of the warnings, he still did it.
But all the crackers should be taken away.
All the crackers taken away, but the rest of it, he should be warned. Did the warnings work? They didn't work. So just warning will work again. He can get crackers again. Yeah. नहीं वो अभी ले लिया कल फिर से लेके आएगा.
If someone brings something that is not supposed to be, the teacher will take it.
Yeah, but then tomorrow he will bring them again.
That doesn't matter.
So is it solving the problem? दोनों कर सकते हैं because the warnings have already been given. है कि नहीं? I take that in your hand.
You take back.
And then you take your phone.
punishment. So I'm not planning for tomorrow.
You will get another phone. Somebody else's phone? Muslim could do that? Yeah, okay, if I warn you that don't talk. Does a warning work? Punish. So here, what is the course of action to be taken? Now the warning hasn't worked. Next course of action logically. Here we are talking about logical course of action. Yeah, warning hasn't worked, now he needs punishments. Right? So will one be effective? No. Two will be effective. Because one hasn't worked previously. Yeah, these are the options. These are the two options. Options just may be there. Yeah, just we are just discussing the course of action. Okay, let's look at this one. Mr. X, an active member of the union, often insults superiors in the office with his rude behavior.
Only two.
Only two. Now, if you look at the statement given, Mr. X, who is Mr. X? What? Okay, what are the facts that you have? Yes, what are the facts you have?
Insult is superior.
Well, first look at the facts. He is an
Would be.
active member of the union. Often insults his superiors. Yeah, with his rude behavior. Now, what is the course of action to be taken? He should be transferred to some other department. He will be doing the same thing there. Will that work? Matter should be referred to the union. Will that work? That is is that a conclusion? And so now based on that, we are assuming that they can handle it. But will his behavior change? Can we conclude that his behavior can change? No. Okay. We can't conclude that his behavior will change. Okay. The matter should be referred to the union. See, it could be either one, either two, both, or none. Those type of options come up, right? So in this case, the matter should be referred to the union. Will that work? We can't say both. We have to say one. Will it work? He is an active member of the union. He himself is an active member of the union. So referring the matter to the union, will the union take action?
He must not be on the high post.
That we don't know. The facts we have are these. He is a member of the union. He insults superiors. He is rude. Yeah. So if he is rude and insults superiors, even in any other department, he can do the same. Right? But nowhere we have come across something like he can, if it had said he could be transferred to some other department where action can be taken. Then we could go with one. But just another department, we can't say that action can be taken, right? So, and two, that also most likely not working because he's a member of the union. So none of these course of actions will work. We can say that. Right? Have to use your logic. Logical क्या है? Not see, we don't go by maybe. We go by logic. He's a member of the union, and he's an active member, not only member. He was just a chota-mota member. Maybe the union would have taken action. He's an active member. That is our fact. Active member means he is somebody who is Important. Will union take action? No, can't take action. Next, another department. A से B में shift किया, इस bank से इस bank में shift किया, people around here, same thing. Yeah. So none of these course of actions will work. Right? Logical. So here we are going only by logic. We are not going by I think so. Discussion. In logical reasoning. Logical reasoning में आ सकते हैं logic में. In JIPMAT, these can, yeah, course of action type of questions will come in logical reasoning mostly. So in JIPMAT, they have included some of these in the comprehension. Right? In the report. In the nothing. If you are doing symbolic, if you are doing empirical. So solution में क्या बोलना है? None of the options can be the answer. Is active member, union must be aware of the behavior, but still not taking action. Okay. Cannot be a solution. Okay, let's look at this question. Is so now you tell me what is the logic behind this. Yes, people? Question on the board. If the above statements are true, which of the following must be true? It doesn't. Many businesses are located in buildings having 8 floors. If a building has more than 3 floors, it has a lift. So, what will be true? What can we conclude from here? What will be true means what can we conclude logically? So second floors do not have lifts. Can we say that? No. Only floors above 3 floors have lifts. If a building has more than 3 floors, it has lifts. But your option says only floors above 3. Because yes. Is C correct? Why? First the statement says if a building has more than 3 floors, it has lift. If it has more than 3 floors. So if it has just 3 floors, then no lift. Only 3. Third floor तक lift जाएगा नहीं जाएगा? It says only. It's extreme. Why eliminate हुआ? That's what I'm asking. Only floors above 3rd floors have lifts. So can we conclude that only floors above 3rd floors have lifts? No. They may or may not. Right? So only is an extreme word. Whenever you come across extreme word, be careful. Right? All floors may be reached by lifts. Can we say that? But if the building is less than 3, it does not have lift. If a building has more than 3 floors, it has a lift. If it has said if, yeah, has it said only buildings above 3 floors have lifts? There's a difference between if and so we don't know a definite answer. So which one can we conclude? B. Only B. Right? नहीं बोल दिया था, but we should be careful. क्यों बाकी नहीं है? Why the logic should be there? The last question. We have to come to a conclusion based on what I learned. If highways were restricted to cars and only those trucks with capacity of less than 8 tons, most of the truck traffic would be forced to run outside highways. Right? Such a reduction in the amount of truck traffic would reduce the risk of collisions on highways. So if you avoided the trucks of more than 8 tons, it would reduce the risk of collision on highways. That's what it means to say. Right? Now the conclusion drawn in the first sentence depends on which of the following assumptions. How can we come to that conclusion?
C.
Most trucks are currently running in the highway have a capacity of more than 8 tons. Okay. Yeah, so if we remove the more than 8 tons, then we have less accidents. Means those are the ones we follow. Okay. So tomorrow we'll do some of the logical reasoning questions. You will be there tomorrow? No. So at least practice. Yeah. So okay. Have you done all the questions from the book on this chapter?
Which chapter?
Now again,
Yeah. You did all the questions. We'll do some of the difficult ones.